morning. Can you hear me? Can everybody hear me? Okay. I'm Shormarka Keita, biological anthropologist, and I'm a physician, but had a long interest in pedagogy. I should ask the elders, may I speak? May I speak? Thank you. All right. My talk is going to be very short. The talk is basically about curricula and how, if we had our way, how would we populate an ideal African studies program in terms of its ancient component. I just want to say in general, I enjoyed the first talk on public health because, that should be a component of any department that we would have about African studies, africana-studies, black studies, whatever we want to call it, because that's very important. However, we know the resources are limited. So I put up here an idealized, because we don't have those kinds of funds in general. But there are certain things in terms of ancient African studies that I think are very important. And I'm going to mention a few things. I'm more interested in discussion. I'm going to be done very quickly. So later on in the questions section, or even after that at lunch, we can sit, if we wish, and talk about what we think might go into such a department. Now, which one of these do I push? The one on the right? Okay. It's not working. I'm in the, what am I doing? Oh, point up. Oh, okay, sorry. Yeah, right.
Oh, there
Yeah, please.
It wasn't on.
Oh, it's not on. Oh, okay.
No, it's also just being weird. No, it's on.
It's on.
It's just being weird.
Do you hit this red thing?
No, the left and right.
Oh. Okay. All right. Point at screen.
There we go. With the USB stick.
You may need to advance it.
Oh.
Okay. All right.
Stop.
Basically, there, in my conception of, we want in any disciplinary approach, a department, to always have critical perspectives. We have inherited many academic disciplines that have been tainted in one way or the other by Eurocentrism, colonialism, or what have you. So we always have to know how to invert the question. We have to be on guard and look for the persistence of those kinds of elements in any disciplines that we do, all right, that we study. Sometimes things lurk and they're embedded in terminology. Sometimes the terms you use to describe something have embedded within them a way that forces you to talk a certain way, to think a certain way, that are very misleading, or that leads you into a way that's incomplete knowledge or not as good knowledge, okay? Generalists and specialists, we need to have people who master enough, get familiar enough with many topics so that they can teach the public and teach the typical student, to have a broad view, and to be competent enough to even put general books together, as well as the specialists who drill down hard, who become masters and do the primary research. Okay? One possible list: paleontologists, people who do geography / climatology, archaeology, both the Holocene and the pre-Holocene. The Holocene begins about 10,000 years ago. Biological anthropology, historical linguistics, and we regional specialists, by which I mean under Northeast Africa would be Egyptologists, people who do ancient Ethiopia, ancient Nubia. West Africa, people who might be interested in the kingdoms of Mali, the Ashanti, etc., Northeast Nigeria. Central Africa, the Kingdom of the Congo and other such states, and South Africa. You may have recently heard about the new find in South Africa of a city that Johannesburg would have been built on the ruins of. Using some very sophisticated measures, they found a settlement that would have had 10,000 people in it. Kareem Sada is the archaeologist on that project. Okay. Now, archaeology, all periods, but especially the Iron Age is important in terms of talking about current African societies, okay? The Iron Age. So when you talk about ancient Ghana, Mali, the Kingdom of the Congo, and other Ethiopia, the Zulu Kingdom, those areas, archaeology becomes very important. There are very few departments, not saying that there are none, that have Iron Age archaeologists in them in terms of africana-studies, okay? Archaeology oftentimes has not been a part of departments that were born out of the heat of the 60s. I'm not speaking of the old line African studies departments that were founded in the 1950s with winter-grin money. I'm talking about the things that came out of the 1960s. So we talk about kingdoms and societies and African culture and African literature at a certain level, but we don't have people who are necessarily specialists in those areas that were trained over this last 50-year period. I could probably stand here and name them. Biological anthropology, study of old skeletons. There have been interesting studies on the Yoruba from the 19th century that give us ideas about health, but we want to avoid certain things, simple-minded things. Historical linguistics, key area for uncovering social life and community interactions in earlier periods. I have just one book I want to mention about this. It's a book written by a woman named Karen Kleiman, a student of Chris Ehret. The title of the book is The Pygmies Were Our Compass. Bantu and Batwa from the early ages to the current period, to the 19th century. What Dr. Kleiman did in this book is she removed the so-called pygmies, let's call them the Mbudi people and the others, in Batwa. She removed them from this notion of them being remnant populations who were leftover hunters and gatherers. And she did something, even though she's European, Euro-American, she rebranded them, which is what we have to do. She calls them forest specialists. And she showed, using historical linguistics and archaeology, how they were actors with agency in the construction of the social life of the things that came before the societies of the Kingdom of the Congo and the other kingdoms in West Central Africa. So if you've never seen that book, The Pygmies Were Our Compass, Karen Kleiman, I would recommend that you take a look at that. It shows the potential of historical linguistics in that kind of recovery of data for understanding society and communities, synthesized with archaeology to get a background for things that we have come to talk about at this time. This is a major issue. How do we get people interested? And where do we provide the places for them to work? It's been a long-running discussion between Molefe, Asante, and myself. How do we get new scholars? How do we get people interested in historical linguistics? Because that's not something you just breeze through. How do we get people interested in archaeology, or for that matter, Egyptology, to do the whole full training? And then once you get people trained, we have to provide the spaces for them to do their work, to be on the teams within our own institutions, which I mean those of our institutions embedded in larger state structures, but also historically black colleges. Because if you have 100 historically black colleges, and none of them, or a few of them, only have Iron Age archaeologists, that means there's a whole lot of space to expand into a niche, or in any other discipline. I'm done. Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you very much. So again, we want to debate this and discuss. We want not debate it, but what other ideas might you have on who you would have in that idealized department of the ancient component of African studies? Thank you.